Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. You are at the All Things Zine session. I am your moderator, Daniel Alonso. Before we get started, here are a few housekeeping items to take care of. We'll be using the chat for presenter questions. Feel free to submit questions anytime during the presentation, but officially the Q&A will take place at the end of the session. If you need some technical assistance or anything, please feel free to direct message me in the chat. And if she's ready, I'm ready to introduce Jennifer Hecker, who will kick off this session. Take it away.
Hey folks, thanks for coming to hear about zines. We've got 3 presenters on this session. I'm going to kick it off with an overview. So if you don't know what zines are, you're about to. And if you already do, or you've already heard me talk about this a few times, just bear with me. I always have a few tweaks and updates. So if you've heard me talk about this already, maybe you'll hear something new this time. Also, just a heads up, at the end of our panel discussion, we're gonna have the Q&A, but right before that, we're gonna teach you how to make a mini zine of your own. So while we're talking, if you want to grab a piece of paper, any piece of paper, letter size, typing paper, whatever would be great, and a pair of scissors. That's all you're going to need. So if you have those 2 things, you're ready to go. But that'll happen here at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and tell you about zines. So I'm Jennifer Hecker, and I run Town Talk Library, which is an independent zine library that I use for teaching and research, including workshops like this. I'm also the reference archivist at the Austin History Center, and I also am the main organizer of the Lone Star Zenfests and the Austin Zine Friends Meetups. So I've been an archivist since 2001, but I've been making zines since 1994, and that's where I get my cred. So today I'm going to get started. Let's see. Oops. There we go. Those were my little images. Sorry about that. Today I'm going to get us started talking about what zines are and where you can find them. And I'm going to focus on Central Texas and the Central Texas zine scene because that's what I know the most about. But most urban areas have some kind of zine community, and this presentation can help you know where to look for zines in your town, or worst case, when you're traveling. So what are zines? Zines are self-published magazines, and they're created for love, not money. So you can see it in the aesthetic, and you can also see it in the content. Wikipedia says the primary intent of publication is to advance the views of the editor rather than profit, since the time and materials necessary to create a zine are seldom matched by revenue for its sale, which is a long version of what I just said, created for love, not money. Chris Dodge in the Utne magazine years ago said zines have the tang of truth about them. They're unabashedly passionate and sell nothing but ideas. And all that is to say that there's really a focus on the subject that the writer is writing about or drawing about or taking photos of, rather than commercial viability. And this really brings a lot of editorial control and makes these publications a really interesting resource for librarians and archivists to collect, because they add voices that aren't often represented, especially in the commercial publishing. So they're wonderful for libraries for that reason. Also, they have another function, which is building community and knitting communities together. In science fiction culture, Camille Bacon-Smith said, "One thing you almost never find in a science fiction fanzine is science fiction. Rather, fanzines were the social glue that created a community out of a worldwide scattering of readers." And this used to be done by mail order and methods like that. Now, of course, we can find each other online, which is great. But a lot of people in various subcultures and with minority or suppressed points of view have turned to zines over the years to express themselves, but then also to find each other and connect with each other. So they often document otherwise undocumented events and movements and subcultures. So here you'll see some really early fanzines. A lot of people say zines started in the 20s around science fiction and Hollywood, movie magazines and fan magazines. Some people will take it way back a lot farther than that to basically the invention of type and being able to express views that are outside of the mainstream in opposition. So let's see. In the I'm not showing you all the zines in the whole world. There are a lot of them, but these are some broad categories. In the 60s and 70s, people were able to get their hands on machines that allowed them to reproduce their zines more easily and cheaply. So in the 70s, especially, there was a big punk rock kind of contingent, DIY ethic, do-it-yourself ethic. And a lot of feminist zines in the 90s. You'll see the Riot Girl zine there, which kind of started the Riot Girl movement, which was inspired actually by the queercore movement. And then let's see, now we've got all kinds of crazy zines. We got political zines, like recipe zines, per-zines, which just means personal zine, where people kind of write diary type stuff or, journaling stuff. Lots of people write comics, a lot of political zines, pretty much any kind of topic you can find, including librarian archivist zines. And I know we're going to talk more about this later, but this is a smattering of zines made by librarians and archivists. If you ever go to ALA, you can go to the Zine Pavilion, and every year there's a zine librarian's pet zine that the zine librarians put together just of our pets. But we've also do more rigorous work in our zines with metadata standards and the Zine Librarian's Code of Ethics. And then also zines about your collections, which we'll talk about later too. So where can you find zines? So there, you can find stores often that have zines. Often independent bookstores and comic book stores will have like a real small amount. This is a picture from inside of Quimby's in Chicago that has like an incredible number of zines that it's very dangerous for someone like me to set foot in that place because they're usually very affordable, so you can end up with hundreds of zines. And then here in Austin, Spend Time Zine Mart had just opened right before the pandemic started. And so we're hoping that they're going to come back and have a physical space again at some point. But all over the country, there are little shops that have a few zines here or there. Quimby's is big and established, and you can order from their website. So there are places like that as well, obviously. Oh, sorry, also Etsy, a lot of people sell their zines on Etsy or on their own websites, artist websites, on Instagram. Hashtag zines can get you help you find a lot of people on Instagram to follow. And also there are distros, which are distributors. And sometimes those are broad categories, and sometimes like there's one called Brown Recluse that it focuses on POC zines. So that's one place. There's also zine libraries, and this is a map of zine libraries currently functioning in Austin, and includes Austin Public Library and the Austin History Center. And it includes up in North Austin, Town Talk Library, which is my library, which lives inside of Monkey Wrench Bookstore. And then there's also Sherwood Forest Zine Library, which is in somebody's front living room, and you can go and visit her whenever she has open hours, which is usually Saturday afternoons or Sunday afternoons. So here's my website. You can see what zines are in the collection on the website, but then you have to go there and see the zines for all kinds of different reasons. Here's the aforementioned Sherwood Forest that is in somebody's living room. And you can see there some of their display techniques. When the pandemic started, they went virtual, and they did an amazing pivot. When I say they, I think it's basically one person, Michelle, who was involved in the film industry. So she had a little unemployment time, and she solicited like thousands of digital zines and slapped them up on her website. And those are really wonderful. You can go and read a lot of zines just right there on the website. Austin Public Library has zines. These you also have to use just on site in the central library branch, but that collection is growing. And during the pandemic, APL also started a couple of zines of their own. The Spicewood Springs branch started a zine because they wanted to connect with their regular patrons who they were missing. And then they started like an online zine as well. Also, they have books about zines, don't you know, and all kinds of information resources concerning zines. Here at the Austin History Center, we also have them. We have them in our periodicals collection, which is interesting because some of them are correctly identified as zines. And then there are other things that are like poetry chapbooks that I kind of, that are hard to draw the line between those kinds of publications. So that's part of zine librarianship. And also we have zines found in our archival collections. So there were a number of musicians who either made zines themselves or their work was reviewed in zines, that kind of thing. And I'm going to be building those collections out a little bit more now that I'm here and have that expertise. So the Fine Arts Library at UT Libraries has zines, lots of art zines, and also some skate zines about skateboarding. A&M Libraries, Texas A&M Libraries has a massive sci-fi collection. They collect in that area in their archives anyway, and then they have several large fanzine collections, and they're known for that. Texas State, also down in San Marcos, has zines in their academic library. Here's an outdated map of zine libraries all over North America. It's, like I said, it's outdated, but you can get an idea of how many places have them. I feel like I super want to check in with the Dakotas when I'm up there this summer and see if they've added anybody up there. But you can just see like how many different places they pop up. This is Denver Zine Library, which is a community-based grassroots library. I like how you can see over to the side there where the way that they display their zines and how they organize them by subject and how they use a lot of upcycled materials like cereal boxes to store their zines. And one thing I really love about working in this space is getting ideas like that, you know, not that I would store archival material in a shoebox for sure, or a cereal box, but just having this wonderful exchange between professional librarians and then people who are so passionate that they just start libraries. You know, you think we don't have a lot of resources. Holy moly, people just do this in their living room. So it's a really fun community to be a part of. Speaking of which, the Queer Zine Archive Project is also a grassroots archive that's in someone's basement, and it's been in operation for over 20 years. They have a really great online catalog, and they're really rigorous about their metadata and whatnot. They also scan a lot of zines, which can be problematic, but they've had really great luck with it, even despite the subject matter and the historic nature of some of their zines. They haven't had any pushback from any creators, which is really cool. But you can read a lot of zines on their website as well. They also have a residency program where you can go and live inside of the archive in the summer and do scholarship, and it's by invitation. So it's because it's in their house. So it's pretty fun. Also, the Internet Archive has a lot of zines, really heavy on political zines here. One reason is because a lot of anarchist collectives post things here and then make them free for use for other collectives to print. So our local anarchist bookstore prints a lot of zines from here and sells them by donation because they're explicitly not copyrighted. And that's a big thing about zine communities as well. There's a lot of copyright infringement and there's a lot of people with strong feelings about not copyrighting their work because they want it to be used by other people. There's also an effort underway to build a zine union catalog. We've been working on it a long time. It kind of reminded me in the tarot brown bag yesterday of what a long journey these tools can give us. But we're working on another NEH grant to facilitate building it out, but it's in beta right now, and you can go look. There are 4 or 5 zine collections whose catalog metadata has been added to the catalog, and eventually what we're hoping is that it'll allow us to provide access to just so many more collections in one place, and search across collections, and also allow these grassroots libraries to contribute as well. Pardon me. There's a Zine Wiki, which some people use as actually a source of authorized subject headings or authorized names, because it's created by the Zine community. They traditionally have a Black Friday Wikipedia edit-a-thon, or wiki edit-a-thon, that anybody can join, but that's a fun resource there too. And then lastly, Zenfests are a great way to meet a bunch of zine creators in one place and see the breadth of the kinds of things that they create, and also to acquire zines. Katie and I were just reminiscing about meeting at San Antonio Zinefest a few years ago, and that she was there buying zines for her collection, and I was there selling zines. So those are really fun. Oh, here it is. Here's me at the 2nd or 3rd one, I guess. So they've been having a Zenefest for a few years now. Zenefest Houston has been going on for maybe 10 years now, almost. And they went virtual this year, like we all have been having to do. Here in Austin, we have a fest called Staple, which is a really big scale Zenefest. It's actually not, it's more what independent media expo is what he calls it. There's a lot more like glossy stuff and a lot of fan art, and just a lot more art kinds of stuff and books and things like that. So it's not specifically focused on zines. But Lone Star Zine Fest, which I run, has a very explicit focus. You must have at least 50% zines on your table if you are to participate. And we just finished our 5th year in March, and we were virtual. So here's what we looked like our first year. This is just a few slides to give you a taste of what to expect if you went to a Zine Fest. This is our first one. It was outside. It was very hot. It was at a bar. It was really great, and people had a good time. Here's what it looks like for somebody to have a little table and selling zines and talking to the people who are buying them and signing up for email lists. Here's the zine making station or zine creation station that we have every year, and people always have a great time with that. And then we usually have zine readings as well, and that's a super fun after party type event or pre-party type event. This was from 2018. We moved to the North Door, RIP. And this was just a much bigger fest. And then every year, the same thing has happened. It's gotten bigger and bigger. And then this year we went online, and you can go to YouTube, or you can go to LoneStarZinefest.org and find our YouTube and watch the whole dang thing right there online if you want to. And lastly, some places have meetups, usually around if there is some sort of a zine space, library, or shop. Often there are meetups that you can find, and find folks who are working on zines there. So that's it for me. And I'm going to turn it over to Katie to talk about her stuff.
Thanks, Jennifer. Okay. Give me 1 second to share my screen here. This is okay. So I work for the University of Texas at San Antonio, and I'm going to talk to you guys today about how UTSA started collecting zines. how we decided what to collect, as well as our collection methods and considerations for providing access to patrons, and some outreach efforts we've participated in over the past couple of years. So I'm not exactly sure when UTSA started collecting zines, but the first zines in our collections were held in the rare books unit. We have rare books and archives in our special collections. And so the zines that we had were mostly shelved in the vault with the rest of our rare books. We did have a few tucked away in archival collections, like Rude Girl, which you can see the cover of issue number 8 here. And then, I don't know, maybe about 2017 or something, we, our special collections librarian began purchasing more zines to add to our collections. And we as a department thought that zines would be a really great avenue for expanding representation of marginalized voices in our collections. So we decided to start collecting them more purposefully. Because zines are self-published, and Jennifer talked about this a bit, they work very well as an avenue for independent writers, artists, activists, who want to distribute their work without jumping through the hoops of traditional publishing, without compromising their views or their voice or their intellectual rights. And we saw that many zines really aligned very well with our already established high priority collecting areas of activism, social justice, Tex-Mex food and cookery, art, Mexican-American history, Black history, and LGBTQ history. And the zines we already had in our collections were a really big hit with students during instruction sessions. So once we decided that we wanted to collect zines more intentionally, we got really excited, but we didn't want it to get out of hand. So we reviewed our collection development policy to confirm that, you know, subject areas that we wanted to collect in, because it's so easy with zines to just like get really excited and say this one's great and this one's great and this one's great, and then like the lines between your own personal interests and the collecting policy get really blurred. So it was helpful for us to revisit that. So we also began to seek out avenues for acquiring zines, and our primary methods of acquisition have been at Zenfests. The two that we hit up the most are the San Antonio Zinefest and the Lone Star Zinefest, which Jennifer organizes in Austin. We have been, excuse me, I lost my place. So both of these events allow zine makers to like sell or give away their zines and art and other like related materials. And because zines are typically inexpensive, we've been able to attend these events and purchase a lot of really great zines to add to our collections. And of course, you know, we always end up with a second bag full of zines for ourselves to take home. Most of the zine makers I've spoken to at these types of events have been really enthusiastic at the prospect of their work being included in the archives. But you know, if you do go to an event like this and you want to collect, it may be worth asking if they want their materials included in a library or an archive, because that may not be in line with their wishes. But most of them have been pretty open to it. Some zine makers, when they found out that that's what we were buying the zines for, they wanted to give them to us for free. So we do prefer to like pay for zines. You know, we recognize that it takes their time to create it, and they incur some sort of cost with materials, and we can afford it, so we prefer to pay. It's not a budget issue for us. It comes out of our rare books budget. And I mean, really, we're only spending a couple $100, which is nothing in the grand scheme of things for an institution like ours. So some other people will sell their work online, like Jennifer mentioned, and that has been a really good avenue for us to collect zines in terms of acquiring zines that are a really great fit for our collections that are from like faraway places, where we might not go to Chicago or Portland or whatever for a Zenfest, but there's some really cool stuff there that we want to collect. It's also great for filling in gaps in a broken string of issues if we're trying to get a complete run of, a string of issues. That's been helpful as well. Another helpful thing that we did when we go to these kind of events was to make our own freebie handout one-page zine. And it's kind of like about us type of deal. But on the front side of the page, like if you unfold it into just the sheet of paper, on the front side of the page, we have the zine content. And then on the back side of the page, we have a donation form. And that was really helpful and made it super easy for makers who wanted to just donate their materials to just donate it on the spot, or they could take it away with them and say, oh, I'm going to mail you like some zines, and then they can just slip that donation form in. So that made it a lot easier on us. Okay, so we have zines. We know that students love them. How do we give access? So for physical access, the archives and rare books in our collections don't circulate. So it was an easy choice for us to decide that we didn't want our zines to circulate. And our, like I said, our collection was already being heavily utilized for instruction sessions. So it was pretty natural for us to decide that our zines should be stored in our rare books vault, which is adjacent to our reading room, which you can see a class of students in this picture. We do have like our archival stacks in another building across campus, but we can't provide on-demand access to materials that are stored there. You have to do it by appointment. And we recognized that students were our primary audience who were really engaging with these materials. And students, for us at least, typically when they walk into our reading room, they want to see something right then and there. They want on-demand access. They don't do too well with making appointments. And if they do make appointments, they often forget about them or just don't show up. So in order to really meet that need, we decided to store the zines in archival folders and boxes in our vault near our reading room. And we decided to store them in archival folders and boxes because a lot of zines are really small, and many of them can be thin, and it can really get lost or overlooked or easily damaged in the stacks. And it's hard to attach cataloging information like a call number or something. I mean, we use slips for our rare books and we just tuck them inside the front cover. But I mean, it would be very, very easy for like this giant slip with the call number on it to fall out of a teeny tiny zine that you can't even see on the shelf that's like wedged in between a couple different books. So we definitely decided to go with filing them in boxes and folders. One thing that we really struggled with after we decided to collect zines was how to handle access points for our patrons. So some of the zines that we had acquired prior to our intentional push to collect were individually cataloged and stored with our rare books, and we were encountering some of those issues that I just mentioned. So we thought it would be easier for patrons to access if we handled them more like an archival collection. And ultimately, we decided to move forward with creating a single finding aid for our zine collection for a couple of reasons. One, we can list zines on a finding aid faster than our cataloging department can catalog them. Zines also being self-published, they don't typically have publisher, place, date, ISSN, or full runs like magazines and newspapers do, which can make them more difficult to catalog. And people often look at zines as like a themed item. So having them intellectually grouped together on a finding aid and then also physically grouped together in a box, you know, people can walk into our reading room and say, I just want to see the zines, and we can hand them a box and they can like browse through the zines. So it's easier for us to retrieve them, and it's easier for the patrons to browse them. And finally, we create MARC records for our finding aids. So people will still be able to find zines in the library catalog through that route. So what we did for the finding aid was we looked around for examples. And the one that we really liked was Texas A&M's zine finding aid. It was pretty awesome. We decided to follow that format. It's pretty involved. You can see like a screen grab of like a portion of the inventory from our finding aid here. And I made a spreadsheet that had like all the different fields that we wanted to include and had a student inventory the zines. We hand encode our finding aids in Oxygen, so it's easiest for us to encode in the spreadsheet for the inventory, so we can just plug in EAD tags in between like the different fields that we want to include. So you can see like on the left, the title is in italics. Most zines have a title, and we decided to list them alphanumerically, first numbers and then titles. So I did grab an example of a zine that doesn't have a title here that I just called Flower. It was just like hand-drawn pictures, and there was very little information about the zine. I think I only knew that it was a Southwest School of Art student who created it because I purchased it from the table that was there at the Zenfests with Southwest School of Art. So that, you know, some of that information just comes from being there. So if we didn't know a title, I put it in brackets. I think we only had 2 zines right now that don't have titles. And any other information that we can pull from the zine, we include that following the title. And then finally, we came up with subject tags. This is the only finding aid I have ever done this for. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's a lot of work to do all the formatting for this amount of information and like listing each one item by item. But it's been really helpful for our users. So the tags are in bold. And what I ended up doing, since students are generally inventorying these and assigning the tags to the zines, I made a controlled tag list for them. And I just saved it as a Word document in the control file for this collection. And anytime I have a student inventory new zines that we're adding to the collection, I say, here's the list of tags. Pick your tags from this list. And you know, if there's something that you feel strongly about that, you know, isn't represented here, then we can talk about adding a new tag to the list. Okay, moving on to outreach, the really fun part. So in my opinion, our outreach efforts with zines have been a big success, and it's been a lot of fun. So in October 2017, UTSA Special Collections participated in the first ever San Antonio Zinefest. That's a picture of me and my boss Amy up at the top at the first Zenfest. And then we showed off examples of zines and some of our poetry chapbooks and underground publications that we already had in our collections. And we've continued to participate in our local Zenfest over the last couple of years. We have also made our own zines to distribute for free at Zenfests and other outreach events. Zines about special collections, zines that feature a specific collection, and even a meta zine, a zine about our zines. You can see that cover of that zine over here on the right, and then like down here at the bottom left, I have an image of like all of our folded zines. And it's just been a great way to have a fun and informative free takeaway for the people that we meet at events. Not just Zenfests, we've used it for other outreach events as well. And we get to, you know, show off some of our cool materials. And though many of the events we bring our zines to our public, we always have people visit our table who study or work for UTSA, and they're always excited to learn that these types of resources exist for them. And then these events are also great opportunities to market special collections as a whole to the public, especially since some people don't realize that our resources are available to the public and not just to students and faculty. And zines don't fold themselves. So if you do decide to embark on something like this for your institution, it can be a fun Friday afternoon, you know, kind of party type thing. I have definitely had like zine folding happy hour at my house. You know, we just kind of get together and have a good time with it. So that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you for listening, and please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And I'm going to turn it over to Heather.
Thank you, Katie. Give me a second to share my screen and make sure I can get on the right slide here with my dual monitors. Does that look okay? My name's Heather Ferguson, and I am the Special Collections Manager at the San Antonio Public Library. And I just wanted to thank the committee for having us. This is and my co-presenters, this was a presentation we were going to present last year during the annual event, and we opted to postpone for this year. And of course, everybody who took time out of your lunch break today to join us at this hour, thank you for being here. And I'm going to talk a little bit, I feel like we're sort of the newcomers to this topic, but to share a little bit of how we've gotten started with zines and in our local community. So as Jennifer pointed out, a Zenfest is a market where independent publishers can showcase their zines. And the San Antonio Zinefest was launched, and I'm sorry if some of this repeats what you heard in Katie's presentation, but of course, it was launched in 2017 by the creative collective minds behind Giflata Zine, La Liga Zine, Saint Sucia, and Yes Ma'am. And they're dedicated, I guess their mission would be dedicated to independently published media, zines, comics, and alternative press. And they aim to organize and uplift the Alamo City's growing zine community. And our library's introduction to zines was through this partnership. In 2018, we served as the host site for the group. So it was helpful that the community already had an active zine community and zinesters who were coordinating and making things happen. And we provided the location, and it was really instrumental in our library becoming involved in the zines. We are a part of our central library. We have the Latino Collection and Resource Center, and they partnered with the Zenfests to host the second annual event in our downtown Central Library location, which featured over 60 publishers and artists, organizations, and all genres of comics, poetry, nonfiction, personal stories, anthologies, photography, art, you name it, under the umbrella. And as far as the library's objective is, we want to continue to strengthen our existing partnerships and to expand and foster new partnerships and between the library and the communities that we serve. And because the Latino collection, a big part of that collection is not just the physical, but the programming aspect. And so it was a natural fit for the Latino collection to kind of spur that. And Emma Hernandez, our former program manager, was quoted in an ALA article noting how the Zenefest allowed the library to foster the community of creative, underrepresented voices and gives them a sense of place. And because SAPL serves a largely Latino population, and it was in 2018, it was like 64%, and based on the 2018 census population estimates. Let's see. So how did we get started? Other than hosting, we formed a committee. So staff of the San Antonio Public Library pulled together, chaired by our Latino collection program manager. Other members included staff librarians, marketing staff, both on the events and programming graphic side, our adult services coordinator, and special collections. And we have representation from both the central and the branch locations. And the primary objective was to focus on publishing the library's first community zine, but we also wanted to build a zine collection for the library. And we established a mission statement and created a subcommittee for collection development. And our mission, the Zine Committee creates, collects, and promotes alternative media resources that inspire appreciation of this do-it-yourself approach to publishing and empower readers to create their own zines. And our vision, the Zine Committee leads the publication of SAPL's community collaborative Big Read Zine and offers programs on zine-related topics and develops the zine collection for SAPL. Our efforts foster freedom of speech and knowledge sharing by and for people of marginalized and otherwise less empowered communities. We also do field trips. So the reading room might look familiar. This is our committee visiting the special collections at UTSA and showing off all the fun things that we found in the collection. So thank you, Katie, for hosting us. That was a lot of fun. And of course, we also are the hands-on assembling the community zine that we have published for the library. So we're putting it together ourselves. So our first community zine was established in 2019. It was open for all ages, and it's celebrating the library's community of emerging artists and writers. We decided it would be an annual publication and it would be thematic. And for the first year, we couldn't help but make it all about the library. How participants love their library. It could be their branch library, whatever library they identify with. And, it was open. And we just sort of did it rogue. We didn't really have a dedicated budget. We didn't have dedicated supplies. We tapped into marketing's department's like leftover printed matter from former invitations, anything and everything we could get our hands on. We even kind of went a little rogue with printing materials on their the marketing's printer. So we just sort of we just did. We didn't really ask, just to get it done. And this is what it looked like when the final production, and the submissions were submitted digitally through like a LibWizard, and the layout and the assembly was done by the committee members. I don't think that there was very few submissions that we didn't accept, and maybe they were based on the length. We had some people submit, pages of content. And so it was, the decision was to try to be as inclusive as possible. But this will show you an example of how we use different textures of paper, different shapes and sizes of inserts. And we just got together as a committee and decided what was going to get printed on what and how we were going to put it all together. And we had kind of like a pizza party, like Katie was mentioning, just get together and let's put this thing together with a long arm stapler and anything we could get our hands on to make it happen. And we had over 30 contributors from across the library system that were featured in this first issue. And it's limited edition, and it was signed and numbered. And then to bring this to the community, we had a launch party in September. It was a free event, open to the community. We invited all of the participants, but it was open to everybody. And that was where they could come and physically pick up their copies. And so we had one of those photo booths, and you can kind of see the excitement. There was a lot of family participation, kids, like I said, it was all ages. So there was a huge group that came out for that event. And let's see, one more slide on this topic. We did silk screening. We got to use some of the patios on the third floor that aren't normally used. During public hours, these doors are not open, but when we have special events, we can get out on the patio and have some really great views of the skyline. You can see that bottom corner, that was the line for silk screens. We had a line the entire night for people to have shirts screened. And what we had done, again, DIY, we went to like the thrift store and bought like a bunch of like plain shirts because we were giving everything away for free. So, they weren't new shirts, but they were whatever we could find, all shapes and sizes and colors. And we did 2 different screens. So one was a positive and one was a negative. So if you had a white shirt or a black, a colored shirt. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. We also had like popcorn and just had people hanging out on the patio for the evening. And this will look familiar to you, but in 2019, we hosted the San Antonio Zinefest for the second time, their third year, our second time participating. And that was October of 2019. And at this time, our committee's participation focused on zine making and collection development. So you've heard a bit about why Zenfests can be a great opportunity to purchase directly from the creators or the publishers or the distros. It's a little bit different being in a city department. Purchasing is always a little more cumbersome for us. So I can't just throw the cash down, but if they could sell things with a card, me and one of our collection development librarians, I just drug him all over the Zenfest to like buy things. And we did introduce ourselves to the creators and said we were collecting them for the library. And like Katie pointed out, many of them wanted to just give them to us, but we did purchase from many vendors, and several were kind enough to give us free copies because they knew it was being added to the library collection, and some of them were really jazzed up about that. Access. So we decided, we had to make decisions, of course, of how to make things accessible. We did decide we would catalog the zines in the library with the exception of the mini zines. However, I will say the first batch did get cataloged with barcodes and call numbers, but we probably will not maintain that in the future with the mini zines. But we decided it would be a non-circulating base collection. But what we did was we created a pop-up zine collection, and that's what you see here. And this is the pop-up library #1, which was assembled. It contains 63 volumes that were purchased or donated from local zinesters who participated in the San Antonio Zinefest in 2018 and 2019. And it's equipped with a small assembly of supplies to support staff-led zine making activities, paper, scissors, colored pencils, glue sticks. So the goal of this particular collection was so that staff could check it out to their branch location and have a zine program or a zine making event, or just to share. But it's really, you won't see this, well, it's the record will be suppressed, so staff will see it on the staff side, but since it's not circulating to the public, we had the record suppressed. But it's a fun way to kind of get it out there. And it's been used by our teen librarians. They have some after school programs. And we even have a branch that has a really active friends group that is made up of teens, all teens, which is very rare in the library setting, but they got really passionate about it and wanted to make zines, and how could they be involved. So that's a great example of how that could be used. And mainly this goes back to not wanting to circulate because things can go missing, and kind of not all of them can be replaced, or many can't be replaced. Once they're gone, they're gone. And so we were a little concerned about that. And part of the access is the physical access in our library. We decided we would put these in they're located at the Central Library in the Marie Schwartz Art Resource Center on the 2nd floor. I know our collection looks like baby compared to all the pictures that Jennifer showed you earlier, but we're just baby steps here getting started. The Marie Schwartz Art Resource Center is a partnership between the Southwest School of Art, which is located directly next door to our building. And it serves as the library of record for the Southwest School's VFA program. And the resources are accessible to both the students and the public. So we felt like that was a natural spot for the main collection to live. And we have a little, donations are accepted through the little zine mailbox there. And we do have a donation form that they can submit, or they can just hand it to us directly. We also will have a special collection that I will maintain in our Texana genealogy department. I haven't developed the finding aid for that, but essentially it will be the goal is for it to be highlighting Texas artists, made by Texas, made in Texas, San Antonio, any kind of local theme. But sometimes, zines come with all kinds of ephemera, stickers and keychains and all the little things that come in, may come with a zine. And we felt like once we put these out on the public floor, that stuff will disappear. And we're okay with that. And our compromise was, if we felt like it was a special zine and we didn't want that to happen, I would purchase a second copy to put in our special collections, so that years down the road, when all the other things have disappeared, we will still have that preserved in our archival collection. So that's kind of the angle that we're headed. We were going to do a collection launch with our Maker Fair. And of course, because of COVID, that got canceled. But we felt like that was when we were going to kind of introduce the collection to the public, and that our plans got changed. Let's see. So our big red, talking about COVID, we had to pivot, of course. So our issue #2, the 2nd edition, became a quarantine edition, and it was the submission deadline was in May of 2020, and it showcased works from our community that document how we've coped, healed, and grown during the pandemic, and works that visualize a future beyond this moment were encouraged. And the zine was at the time we weren't sure if we were just going to do it digital and maybe do a physical, but it just became a full digital. It's free for download from our website off of a LibGuide. And yeah, it worked out pretty well. You know, it seemed easier, but you know, we had to rely on our marketing team to help with the layout. I believe Emma did a lot of work on the layout. Of course, you can see everything looks very branded because because the marketing team has a part in that. I think our next issue may look a little more DIY, and let's get back to the basics. Other things that had to pivot to a digital format were just other programming aspects, like the Latino collection had produced a zine that was the culminating project of a 3-part writers workshop, the Altering Latinx Memoir Workshop series with art educator Bonnie Cisneros. They were originally going to produce these like alters, and then created this really awesome zine. It's like 35 pages, 34 pages, but it's available free for download. I would encourage any of you to seek that. And it's a great example of how these artists and writers kind of shifted gears and produced something really awesome and long lasting. Because the altars probably would not have lasted, but the zine will be around for hopefully forever. Let's see. I will say that we also had like the staff helped the participants digitize some of their materials early on in the workshop. So we have like a mobile memory lab equipment, and that has like a scanner and a laptop and anything you would need to kind of digitize standard equipment. And we were able to implement that in that program. As for what the other things we've been producing are mostly mini zines that are created by staff, primarily the Zine Committee. They're Infozines, so they're sort of a condensed version of what maybe you would put on a LibGuide. Just general information like from our job center, how to write a resume or an interview. We have one about the homeless connection hotline and some numbers for, you know, the community. That's basically been, they've just been, it's even hard for me to keep track of these. I'll find them in the library and, you know, grab some for the archival collection. But since we've been closed for the pandemic, there hasn't been very many donations, have all been staff donations that we've gotten in the last year. And the next issue of the committee is in the process of our Big Read Zine third issue and for 2021. And we'll have our call for submissions in July, give people about 6 weeks. And our goal is to have it published in December of 21. And we are going to go back to a physical copy, a physical printed copy. But we're thinking it might have to be kind of a blending of the two. We're trying to figure out if we will, how we'll implement maybe some digital content, either by using QR codes or something to kind of bridge the gap between the physical and the digital format. Again, we don't quite have a budget. We're going to make it work. We haven't really figured that part out in terms of like printing it and how that will all work, but we'll make it happen. So that's actually my last slide. And so before we get to Q&A, I'm going to stop my sharing and turn it back over to Jennifer. Thank you.
I'm happy to jump in at the Q&A. We had a couple of questions.
Hang on, I'm gonna show people how to make a zine first.
Oh, you are? I thought that was after the Q&A.
No, just real quick, I'm gonna do a little demo so that y'all can be folding while we do the Q&A and working on your zine. So this will just take a second. Get your piece of paper. And I think Daniel's gonna drop a link in the chat if he still has it handy, that'll take you to a graphic that'll help you with this too. But so take your piece of paper and we're gonna make a mini zine. There are a lot of different kinds of zines and I'll show a few other sizes in a little bit, but we're gonna just make this one today. So take your page and fold it in half. The kids say hamburger style, or maybe where you grew up they said hamburger style. I only learned it when I started doing zine workshops, but the short way here, fold it that way. And then if you got your bone folder, you know you're going to want to make a better crease there because it makes everything easier, right? It makes it easier to fold. So crease your side there and then fold it this way. Or if you want to, you can, after doing that, unfold it all the way and fold it this way. Hot dog style. So you're just making creases where your pages are going to be. So right now it's kind of a mystery, but don't worry, it will all come together. So you've got it hot dog, you got it hamburger, so you got kind of a quarter sheet like this. Yeah, hot dog, like Dr. Gracie would say. And then fold it one more time so that now you've got this tiny looking guy here. So it's hot dog once, hamburger twice. Make all your creases real nice. It doesn't matter how accurate you are, except that when you go to fold, the more accurate you are, the easier it's going to be for you to fold, like origami. So once you've got your folds made, so your paper looks like this with all your folds, then you're going to want to cut just right here, this middle part. And the way you do it is doing your hamburger fold like that, so it's in half. And then you're gonna cut from the folded side, not from the open side, but from the folded over side. You're gonna cut just from the top to the middle. So just one little slice like so. And then here's where the magic happens and where people get stumped. So I'm sorry we're not in person where I can lean over your shoulder like a kindergarten teacher and help you with this. But in the middle, you're going to have this like little mouth. If you push your paper together, it'll go kind of like so. And then you just collapse it down and you've got a book. I know that was magical and freaky, so I'm going to do it again. Just kind of, if you take a minute and fold all of your seams both ways, that also helps. It just makes them more flexible. But yeah, make sure you're right here. This is not good. You want both of your seams to be in the same thing and kind of pop up like this and squish it together. I hope this is helping. And squishing it together. And so you have kind of a star like that, and then you just, whoop, and whichever, it doesn't matter what the front is, you can pick. You can refold it or manipulate it around like you're the boss of your zine. So then when you have this, you've got a cover, a front cover and a back cover, if you want to think about it that way. And then you've got like 6 pages inside or 3 2-page spreads, if you want to do it that way. So if you'd like, while we're doing the Q&A, you can fill this out and make it into a zine. You can make your cover. And I always like to put my Creative Commons license on the back because I'm a librarian, and put the date and my name and maybe a URL or my email address so that somebody can contact me. And then on the inside, I heard a good prompt recently, which was that a genie has given you 6 wishes, but you can't wish them for yourself. So you have 6 wishes to wish for someone else. And you could make a zine about that, or you could make a zine about 6 things people don't know about your collections. Maybe 6 collections people don't know you have. You could make it about 3 collections people don't know you have and just write bigger. How about that? You can also, super pro tip, when you unfold it, you could either make it a reversible zine by unfolding it and just folding it the other way inside out, or you can make a poster on the inside. which is fun as well. So like I said, and I'll make this quick as well, that's a mini zine, little bitty zine. Here's a really nice one from the Sally Bingham collection at Duke that has a really great zine collection, and they have this zine about their collection. Here's one that's made out of just the regular piece of paper, same piece of paper, except they just cut it in half and folded it and stapled it. So it's just half of a regular sheet of paper, just folded and stapled. Here's one that's a whole letter size sheet of paper, just folded and stapled, not cut at all, folded and stapled. It's called digest size, and it's like one of the most common sizes, super easy. Then there's also like crazy ones like this one that's on massive, huge paper. This guy really cares about fish, and he writes lots of things about the oceans, and it's amazing. And it's bound with twist ties. So DIY. All right. Q&A?
Okay. Sorry for interrupting you before, Jennifer.
Oh, no, you're good.
I have a couple of questions. One was answered in the chat. The question was for Katie about whether she has a collecting policy for students or on campus, or just a collecting policy that's available anywhere. And then she posted the link in the chat, which is where that answer is. Jennifer, you mentioned the line between chapbooks and zines. Can you talk more about those overlaps, such as between artist books and zines?
Yeah, so like I was just showing you all the different sizes and shapes, and you know, artist books like are often self-published or published in collaboration with a very small press often, and you know, there's not a line really. It's kind of it's a creative interpretation. So I think there are zines in my collection that I think one could argue are an artist book. I have like a really beautiful, very small zine that folds out in an accordion and has like a letterpress piece of artwork that unfolds as you open it. You know, it was in the zine section of the store, but it was an art book store. You know, I don't know, like, what do you call that? So I don't think there's like a real clear delineation, and I think partially it even it could be determined by the intent of the zine or by what you're collecting it for. If you're an artist, if you're an art library, maybe you're going to have some zines in there that are like photography zines where somebody has just printed a bunch of their photos, but maybe, you know, I don't know, if it's printed on something like Royal Fancy, then it's not a zine anymore. It's like, it's kind of a loosey-goosey thing. Same thing with poetry. You know, you can, I mean, it's not necessarily a physical format thing, but it kind of is. So, ooh, safety pins. Yeah, that's a good binder too. I've also been asked as an archivist, how to make a zine to make it be archivally sound. And I tend to tell people not to ask that question, because if you're making an art object, then you should do your job and we should do our job that we have a whole profession around and that we get paid to do, which is figure out how to preserve your creative output.
So speaking of which, there's a question in the chat about whether you, all three of you, not just you, Jennifer, could speak more about the ways that you've gone about ensuring the longevity of zine collections. And the questioner says, I've tried tracking down different zine libraries in my area only to find that they disappear into thin air once the librarians spearheading the projects move to a new job or new library or a new state, such as such as Virginia. That's it.
I will say that, I mean, as an archive and special collections, we have made it an intentional component of our active collecting. So our special collections librarian does, you know, active collecting, and because we purchase the majority of the zines in our collections, that has just become part of it. It also helps that, like, for instance, we had a change of staff So the special collections librarian who kind of started the zine collecting, we have a new special collections librarian now. But me, the manuscripts archivist, I was involved in this as well. And, you know, very interested in and invested in it. And, you know, our new special collections librarian now is very much on board with collecting zines, and they are like really gung-ho about it. So it does help to, like, you know, lay that out, I guess, as an intentional collecting area, and remember that as you're making purchases if you have funds to do so. But yeah, just getting other people in your workplace involved with collecting and managing the collection can help ensure that longevity of the collection, I think.
And
I agree with
as our-
Katie.
oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Jennifer, did you want to go?
No.
I was just gonna piggyback on what Katie said about, you know, having staff change. So of course, we've already experienced that with our Latino program manager left this year for another position. And, but part of having the committee is that there's a base group of people that are involved and able to carry the initiative forward. Not one person can do it, and it needs to be a collective. And then in terms of like preserving them, I think that's why I'm doing the special collection aspect of it, because we know that the things that are on the floor are going to walk away. They will sprout little legs and walk out the door. And so we just, we're just being acceptance of that. You know, we want to put them there for the public, but we know that whatever is out on the floor, it will get damaged. It could get put in the wrong place. And so we're not putting a whole lot of focus into trying to keep it in any sort of semblance of order. Right now it's a small collection, so it's doable. But I think the two main things is having a group involved and having sort of this special collection aspect that would maybe preserve some of the ones that we want to make sure stick around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll say, like, again, yeah, like you're saying, in the archives, you know, hopefully the things that I collect during my archival career will still be here when I leave. And like Katie was saying, you know, tying it to your collection policy anyway, I don't intend to build a zine collection here. I intend to enhance our existing collections with zines, you know. But in the public library, especially, I think it's more of an issue because priorities change so much in that context. And in fact, we've already had some of the rug pulled out from under some of the zine activities that our public librarians were doing about making a crowdsourced zine and stuff like that. So I don't know how that's going to end up going forward, but I feel like making sure that you're really explicit about aligning your work with whatever your mission and vision and goals of priorities of your institution are is helpful.
Okay, so the next question. What are y'all's thoughts on collecting digital surrogates of zines? And is it an approach to community archiving or working with donors that want to retain physical copies? If so, are there any of you hosting digitized zine collections? Now, before you answer, it seems to me like that would be anathema to the whole ethos of zines to have them digital, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, people make digital zines,
Yeah.
which we could talk then about how is that different from a website or a online exhibit or a blog, but anyway.
Yeah, there's definitely a really blurry line there. I will say that, like, we have not intentionally captured zines that you can find online. Like if somebody hosts a PDF on their website of like their zine, and it's not really a website, they really wanted it to be a zine, we're not going and capturing that. However, we do have collections like the Rude Girl zine that y'all saw in one of my slides. We do have archival collections where we've followed kind of a post-custodial model, and we've digitized some of the materials and returned originals to owners, because in that particular instance, like that's an older zine. It's not something that is produced anymore, and I think the owner wanted to keep the physicals for themselves. I was not involved in that, but it is something that we have done in the past.
And I would say, other than the ones we've created ourselves, we're not actively acquiring digital. The copies that we have, we've digitized our own in terms of just sharing them on a LibGuide. So right now we don't have like a preservation, digital preservation plan in place. As I know that sounds crazy, but things are just living on a LibGuide right now for access. Right now it's all about access. And really the 2020 edition was kind of like, we just had to pivot, because how else were we going to do it? It was too many unknowns about what the pandemic was going to mean for collecting and sharing and making things accessible. So we just made the decision to just go for access above anything.
The Zine Librarians group, which is a really great collective that has an unconference every year, which has now gone online, at least for this next year, it'll be online. So I highly recommend it. It's free to attend. And you can find information at zinelibrarians.info. There's not any information up yet. It'll be coming later in the summer, but I highly recommend it. And we, as a group, have published a zine called the Zine Librarians Code of Ethics. But there's also one that we've been working on called the Zine Librarians Digitization Code of Ethics, which was section left out of the original one that we thought merited its own whole discussion. And I posted a link in the chat to this blog post from Duke, written by Kelly Wooten, who's one of the preeminent zine librarians in America. And this kind of was a foundation of some of that, the Code of Ethics and the Digitization Code of Ethics, and talking about just ways that we address zines a little bit differently than you would other materials. So.
Okay, we've got a little less than 15 minutes. Jennifer's going to show us something, but if anybody has questions, they can put them in the chat, or if they'd like to talk, they can simply unmute and ask their question.
Someone mentioned in the comments about artist books and like drawing the line and making like artificial collections.
Yeah.
And that was definitely, I just wanted to add that that was something we grappled with when we were making the finding aid for our zines and making that decision to make a finding aid for an artificial collection. And it's a little tricky. We definitely do some of the things a little bit differently. I have yet to review the DAX updates that address artificial collections. So I haven't like made any modifications to the finding aid, but I'll put a link to our finding aid in the chat, and you can kind of see how we handled some of the things. For example, like for creator, we just said that the creator was us, our institution, because it's creator or compiler. I put in a historical note that says, you know, this is what zines are and we're collecting them. You know, I tried to keep it really brief because it's not kind of kosher. I don't know. It's kind of funky. So anyway, that's just an example of how we handled an artificial collection.
Were you going to show something, Jennifer?
Oh, I could.
Oh, you went. Seemed like you're searching.
Yeah, I was poking around trying to find the Zine Librarians Code of Ethics because the zine version of it is not, something's messed up on the Zine Librarians website. I found the online version and just was reminding myself that I think this was also partially some of the root of what's become some work that Kelly Wooten and some other people are doing on the ethics of care and bringing the ethics of care and some feminist theory into what we do also. And I think some of this ties in with that as well. So if that's something you're interested in, they're related.
Okay, it is 10 till.
Has anybody made a zine?
You mean like right now?
Yeah, has anybody worked on, has anybody have anything they want to turn their camera on and show us? I made a cover of 6 fungi I've found in my backyard this week, but that's as far as I've gotten. Ooh.
I just did the cover.
Hey, nice handwriting there.
I do love your amazing drawings, Christy.
Totally. Yeah, if you can't draw, don't worry. You can either just draw anyway, or clip art's a big tradition in zine making and stealing images from other people and or collaborating with other artists you might know maybe. And the one that Christy, I don't know if you clicked on the link Christy just put in the chat, we used for that workshop, we used some templates. And you can find a lot of them online. The one that Christy used is one that I made out of using security envelope paper from the inside of your junk mail. Those patterns can make really great backgrounds, just graphic chunks that you can use and write over or on top of or whatever. Yeah, there you go. So some of the zines we've talked about here today are in the zine grab bag in the silent auction. So go over there and bid that thing up. And in Slotto.
I hope that was okay, Christy. I didn't scroll. Well, I guess it is public. All right. All right.
I can show one that I made for our homeless hotline. I don't know. Can y'all see me? I don't even know what.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this one here.
Oh yeah, lift it up a little.
Okay, sorry. I can't see my screen, so I don't know what y'all are seeing. But basically, it was to promote information from a website, you know, about the homeless connection hotline. But, you know, like taking a pattern like the phone cord that would go all the way, you know, through the pages. I do like to do like the spread, you know, you can turn them either way, but I like the spread, you know, and just try to implement other, you know, aspects of you're passing along information mostly on some of these, and just, you know, have fun with it.
I just put one more link in the chat too. Oh yeah, those are great. There's an image of how to make a zine that I really enjoy just because it promotes theft and criminality, but also it tells you at the end to go hide your zines around, which I have seen people doing before. And I think that's kind of fun, but your Infozine about resources for people experiencing homelessness, I think that would be like a really fun project actually to put together Infozines like that and then take them around and leave them at bus stops and places like that where folks could find them.
There's a zine in San Antonio called That Gray Zine, and it's about mental health. And they show up at Zenfests and maker fairs and things like that, but they also just leave zines around town at places like bus stops. And I happened to come across one when I was having a really crappy day, and it was the most awesome find. So I love when people do, you know, just like drops of zines or other pieces of art and things like that in public places.
I believe they, the Gray Zine, they were one of the creators that donated during the fest. They just wanted to give.
All right, if that's all the question answers, I'd like to give a shout out to our presenters. They did a wonderful job. And I appreciate hearing from them, and I'm sure you all do as well. So let's have a virtual round of applause if y'all can do that. I'm going to do one right here. Yeah, there you go. All right. We'll see you all this afternoon. Take a break, and we'll be at the next. Sorry, let me look. I can't remember what the next sessions are. Well,
Brian says vendors at 2.
thank you, Brian. Vendors at 2 o'clock. Yes, and don't forget the all attendee virtual thing today at 4 o'clock. And I hope to see you all there, and we'll be ending the meeting. All right. Bye, everybody.